Eerie, ITV News.
And that is it for now. Next, it's the evening news with Lucrezia. From all of us on the London team, thank you for watching and have a lovely evening. Bye-bye.
New Orleans terror attacker acted alone with a desire to kill. Among his 14 victims, an aspiring nurse, a Princeton football star and a father of two, all seeing in the new year. It's as more details emerge on the suspected attacker, a former US soldier inspired by the Islamic State group.
Let me be very clear about this point. This was an act of terrorism. It was premeditated and an evil act.
Authorities said there was no definitive link, though, with a Tesla Cybertruck explosion outside one of Donald Trump's hotels in Las Vegas, also tonight. Britain braces for a big freeze after heavy flooding in some parts. New weather warnings as snow is set to hit much of the country. In England, detecting cancer early on hits a record high, but for many, it's still a waiting game when it comes to treatment.
Always loved taking something pretty ordinary and elevating it. Some little tips.
Meghan, the Duchess of Sussex, returns to Instagram as she plugs her new show and... Can he go all the way? Teen dart sensation Luke Little are now one step from the World Championship final.
This is the ITV Evening News with Lucrezia Millarini.
Good evening. The FBI tonight revealed it now thinks the suspect in yesterday's New Orleans truck attack was acting alone. The US security agency also said no definitive link had been found to a Tesla that exploded in Las Vegas a few hours later. 14 victims were killed when a man identified as military veteran Shamsuddin Jabbar drove into New Year's Day crowds. He was shot dead by police. Authorities say he was 100% inspired by the Islamic State group, calling the carnage an act of terrorism. From the US, here's our correspondent, Robert Moore.
36 hours on, and a clearer picture is beginning to emerge of the New Orleans massacre on Bourbon Street. On security cameras, the white truck could be seen in traffic before it mounts the pavement to avoid a police car blocking the road. It then accelerated, scattering pedestrians, many just narrowly surviving. Dozens of others were either killed or injured. Police responded with urgency, and the driver was shot dead after a brief gun battle. Shamsuddin Jabbar was a former US soldier from Texas, and it seems a recent convert to the Islamic State. A jihadist with a mission to kill in the opening hours of the new year. FBI agents have pieced together a profile from his social media postings.
He posted several videos to an online platform proclaiming his support for ISIS. There were 5 videos posted on Jabbar's Facebook account, which are time-stamped beginning at 1:29 a.m. and the last at 3:02 a.m.
But that early FBI belief that he was part of a jihadist cell has now receded. The Bureau now suggesting he was, in fact, a so-called lone wolf terrorist. Among the victims of the attack were Kareem Badawi, a freshman at the University of Alabama. Nakira Dado, set to start college with dreams of becoming a nurse. Hubert Gathrow, whose death was confirmed by his former high school. Martin Betch, a former football player at Princeton University turned junior trader. Nicole Perez, a single mother in her late 20s, who had been recently promoted at the deli she worked in. And 37-year-old father of 2, Reggie Hunter, described as being full of life by his family. 6 hours after the New Orleans attack, and this Tesla Cybertruck exploded in Las Vegas. The vehicle was packed full of fireworks and fuel canisters. Whether this was connected to New Orleans is still under investigation. But from the governor of Louisiana, a clear warning.
You can't go out there and say, oh, I'm going to put this in place and that in place and hope that evil doesn't show up on your doorstep, because it will. You have to crush it. And that's what we're going to do here.
Oh, my God.
The tragedy in New Orleans is a dark start to the new year in a city known around the world for its music and its sense of joy.
Well, let's speak to Robert now, who is in Washington. Robert, authorities think the two attacks are not linked.
Well, that's right, but this is the heart of the investigation. Investigators at the FBI trying to understand the ideologies, the identities, and what drove them to these acts, and whether there are accomplices, and indeed whether there is that connection. At the moment, the Bureau of Investigation says there are no clear links, but there are coincidences. They happened, 6 hours apart. They happened at two iconic American locations, Bourbon Street in New Orleans and just off the Strip in Las Vegas. Both drivers used the same car rental app. And indeed, both were kind of connected to the military and at one point served on the same military base, although that also is unconfirmed. The other point here is this is all taking place in something of a political vacuum. We're in the dying days of the Biden administration. President-elect Donald Trump has written some sort of eviscerating messages on his social media platform, blaming the Department of Justice and the FBI and Democrats in general for essentially prosecuting him and leaving America exposed. He wrote even that America is falling apart. So that gives you a sense that these investigators are working in a very toxic political environment.
All right, Robert, in Washington, thank you. Well, here, wintry weather warnings have come into force for parts of the country tonight as a cold snap sets in. The UK Health Security Agency says elderly people are at particular risk, with temperatures plunging as low as -8. It follows heavy rain that's already brought flooding and some travel disruption. This evening, snow and ice warnings will last into tomorrow, before England and Wales brace for heavy snow and freezing rain on Saturday. And by Sunday, most of Britain will be under yellow weather warnings. Well, with more, here's our North of England reporter, Kelly Foran.
It may look a pretty picture, but this frosty weather has triggered a nationwide health warning. As the country braces itself for the next weather events, this part of Greater Manchester is still recovering from one. Cars not stuck in traffic but underwater as a month's worth of rain fell in 24 hours. The pole in this photo, a bus stop, taken from Leanne's window. Evacuated from her apartment, she's still not allowed back inside.
The water just came, and it came so quickly in the space of about 40 minutes. The garage was full because it's on a slope. All the water just kept running in, and it was just like quite overwhelming.
This hotel, still blocked off by floodwater, was housing 500 refugees and asylum seekers. They had to be rescued by boat. Bedding piled high in the local mosque, where many of them slept overnight.
Few vulnerable people, dementia, disabilities, illnesses. Obviously some of them was refugees, some were obviously from residents as well. So some were distressed. Lots of children didn't know what was going on.
Although the river levels are still fairly high today, yesterday they were measured at levels that were the highest on record at almost 12 foot. The water so high, hundreds were trapped in their flats.
No power, no transport, no clean water. So this is a really great start to 2025, everyone.
Depressed, I suppose. Because obviously I've lost my car, somewhere to live. It's hard for people.
The emergency services had to rescue 1,000 people.
I've served for nearly 3 decades now, and I've never sort of managed the multi-agency response, working with police and councils and volunteers from the Red Cross and mountain rescue and a whole range of people, where we need to rescue 1,000 people in a day from their homes. So it is fairly unprecedented.
And as temperatures are due to fall over the coming days, health bosses say deaths could rise. And because of those fears, there is a cold health alert for England, and they're only issued when there are concerns that the temperatures could have an impact on people's well-being. Now, the rain here has stopped, but those weather warnings haven't. There are still warnings in place for snow and ice for England, parts of Wales and parts of Scotland. They go right through until Monday. And I mean, this time last week it was Christmas time, and it was actually unusually mild for this time of year, but that's all set to change very soon.
Certainly is. So, Kelly, thank you. One of 4 pedestrians hit by a car on Christmas Day in London's West End has died in hospital. 25-year-old Aidan Chapman was fatally injured after the incident in Shaftesbury Avenue. His parents described him today as a loving, kind, funny soul. One of Donald Trump's closest advisers, the Tesla and ex-boss Elon Musk, has lashed out at the British government. He criticised Sir Keir Starmer over how authorities handled historical grooming allegations. Now the Conservative leader, Kemi Badenoch, has echoed his demands for an inquiry into what she called the rape gangs scandal. Our deputy political editor, Anushka Astana, is in Westminster tonight. Anushka, how will Mr Musk's comments be viewed in Downing Street?
Well, what they're not going to do is respond directly to Elon Musk. They do not want to start a row with one of Donald Trump's closest allies, but they are pretty frustrated about this. This actually starts in Oldham, one of the places where there was a scandal involving grooming gangs, many of the perpetrators of a South Asian heritage. There was an inquiry there, but victims wanted more. So Oldham Council wrote to the government and said, can we have a Home Office-backed inquiry? The response is a bit complicated, but the government said they did not want to get involved centrally. That went up on X, on the social media site, and actually our former Prime Minister Liz Truss waded in to say the minister involved was Jess Phillips. Well, that led to an extraordinary response from Elon Musk. He said that Jess Phillips deserves to be in prison. Now, that has caused some anger in government for a number of reasons. Firstly, Jess Phillips supported the idea in her letter of Oldham holding an inquiry. She just didn't want central government to get involved. But also, the Conservatives actually set up this idea of local-led inquiries into this issue. They wrote a similar letter to Jess Phillips a few years ago, and yet the Conservatives have got involved today and now said that there should be a national inquiry in all of this, as you have said. I think what this shows is Elon Musk's massive influence and also how much he dislikes Keir Starmer. In fact, he's very much supporting Reform UK, talk of him giving them money, but also he's been tweeting about them as well, saying only they can save Britain.
And Anushka, what would Nigel Farage think of that then?
Well, on the one hand, he's delighted at the idea that Elon Musk is supporting him and also hopeful that he will give him money. But here's one complication. Elon Musk is also on Twitter supporting Tommy Robinson, the anti-Islam activist who is in jail because he repeatedly defamed a Syrian refugee despite being ordered not to do. And here's the thing. Farage might like the support of Elon Musk, but he does not like Tommy Robinson. In fact, he left UKIP saying that he did not want to be closely associated with Robinson when he had been hired as an advisor.
All right, Anushka in Westminster, thank you. British rapper Stormzy has been banned from driving after using his phone behind the wheel. The 31-year-old, whose real name is Michael Ebenezer Iwowu Jr., was caught by an undercover police officer in March. Today he was fined and given a 9-month ban. Next, record levels of patients in England are getting an early-stage diagnosis of cancer. Almost 60% of cases were detected within the period when treatment is most effective. Health bosses credit a major testing drive, but many patients still face months waiting for care. Our correspondent Rachel Younger explains.
Her granddaughter's prom, her grandson's graduation. Moments Janet Cowley counts herself lucky to have seen, after a routine scan following a shoulder operation picked up signs of cancer on her lung.
Being older, you just think of cancer as a death sentence. And you don't realise that if you get early detection, that it can't save your life like it did with me.
Janet is one of a record number of patients with the most common cancers like breast, prostate or lung being diagnosed before the disease has a chance to spread to elsewhere in the body. It follows a relentless focus on early diagnosis.
We've been running a lot of public awareness campaigns, and we've also started to look at the people at highest risk, such as people who've smoked, who are over the age of 55, where we offer them a targeted lung health check and the opportunity to have a CT scan if there's a chance of them having lung cancer.
But there's more work to be done. The NHS wants 75% of cancers to be detected at stage 1 or 2 by 2028. That would mean diagnosing around 34,000 additional patients at an earlier stage. But survival rates also hinge on getting rapid access to treatment. NHS England has a target of 85% of patients starting it within 62 days of being referred. But fewer than 69% are currently meeting that target, and it's now been 9 years since it was last hit. That's one of the reasons why the UK continues to lag behind comparable countries. Take a look at this chart on breast cancer, for example, which shows that although survival rates have been improving in the UK, we are still 5 or 6 percentage points behind places like the US and Japan. And while Janet's lung cancer was caught and treated in time, her brother's wasn't. The two of them best friends since childhood.
He was diagnosed at the same time as me, but he wasn't as lucky as me. I just feel guilty that I survived and he didn't.
She wants anyone offered an NHS check or a scan to take it.
5 minutes out of your life can save your life.
A New Year's resolution worth keeping. Rachel Younger, ITV News.
There's plenty more to come on the ITV Evening News, including...
He wants tops for the match. Luke Littler.
After last night's victory, Team Dart star Luke Littler takes on Stephen Bunting in tonight's semi-finals. Meghan Markle kickstarts the new year with a return to Instagram. And the Northern Lights grace the UK skies on the first night of the year. But first, if you'd ventured out for the January sales, you may have noticed a sharp rise in shut-up shops. On average, 37 closed each day last year, and retail experts say worse is set to come in 2025. Our consumer editor, Chris Joy, is here. Chris, pretty dire warnings about the high street then.
Yeah, it's depressing for a lot of people in neighbourhoods all over the country walking past these closed shops, and there's the unseen consequences, the job losses, the people that battle to set up these firms only to see them close. And as you say, nearly 40 a day closing last year. Remarkable figures. Have a look at my graphic. That tells the grim tale, really. Annual store closures were bad enough in 2023, but just look at how they shot up in 2024 to well over 13,000 shop closures. And, of course, accompanying that, this dismal rise in retail job losses to almost 170,000. Just look at that figure. And 65% of those closures were independent stores. And if you look at the kind of obituary list of retail, you see some pretty big names there. Things like Carpetright are up there. Of course, Ted Baker, a well-known store. Homebase that was around for more than 40 years. Some little bits of good news. For example, Body Shop went into administration, then was brought out of administration, so jobs there saved. Some of these shops were closing because of administrations, going into bankruptcy, etc. Others were just individual stores within a chain, closing as the chain seemed to become more efficient. The reasons behind all this, very familiar, of course, partly our fault, I'm afraid. Changing shopping habits, everything shifting online, cost of living crisis. For some stores in 2024, that's just been the end of things.
That's all that goes. All right, Chris, thank you. Police in South Korea have raided the offices of the airline and airport involved in Sunday's plane crash that killed 179 people. The Jeju Airlines jet overshot the runway at Muan International Airport, killing all but 2 of those on board. It is the country's worst aviation disaster. Well, next, as if to rival the fireworks on New Year's Eve last night, nature staged its own show in the skies. Parts of the country were treated to a perfect view of the Northern Lights. That's thanks to a so-called solar storm. Rhys Williams reports.
It's a sight that simply doesn't get old. From Shetland to Swansea, the nation was dazzled by yet another stunning solar storm. The northern lights, or aurora borealis, are caused when electrically charged particles collide with gases in the Earth's atmosphere after a solar eruption. It's a sight that until recently would require a bucket list trip to the Arctic Circle.
I set myself up on this bridge here.
But photographer Matthew Brown snapped this shot last night near his home in southwest Wales. You must have been very happy with the result. It's spectacular.
Absolutely delighted. It's always a treat to see it. It's, as you understand, it's very rare in this part of the world. So just very, very happy to capture it on camera.
Roughly every 11 years, the sun reaches the peak of what's known as its solar cycle, at which point it blazes with bright flares and solar eruptions, making the northern lights much more visible further south, especially in areas like this with extremely low light pollution. For aurora hunters, more opportunities to see the mesmerising lights are expected soon.
We are now in what's called the solar maximum. So we have a really good chance in this part of the world of seeing the northern lights when we have favourable conditions and of course favourable weather.
Whether you believe the myths, legends and omens associated with what solar storms produce, their ethereal beauty is undeniable. And after the most colourful start possible to 2025, there's much more to come. Rhys Williams, ITV News, Carmarthenshire.
Now, Meghan Markle is back on Instagram. She deleted her old account before marrying Prince Harry, and their subsequent joint profile has been inactive for years. But now the Duchess has returned to the platform under her own name and with a new programme to promote. So Mahathir Pasha is here. So Mahathir, already nearly 1 million followers.
Well, Lucrezia, you're right. She is back and very much back with a bang. The Duchess of Sussex has largely remained away from the spotlight in 2024, but her return to Instagram might suggest something different is in store for the new year. In her first video posted yesterday, Meghan runs barefoot towards the waves and traces 2025 in the sand as she giggles and jogs away. That post has now been viewed 5 million times and her account has amassed almost 1 million followers. As you say, not long ago, Meghan posted again on Instagram, this time promoting a new Netflix production, seemingly showing her having a great time cooking with some friends. In the caption accompanying this video, she says, "I hope you love the show as much as I love making it and wishes everyone a happy new year." The Duchess did, of course, delete her personal social media accounts ahead of the royal wedding in 2018. She has indicated she might make a return to social media sometimes, but other times sounded reluctant, citing concerns about harassment. For those wondering where Prince Harry is, well, although this account is very much Meghan's personal one, the Duke did make a very brief appearance in that Netflix trailer and reportedly was behind the camera filming Meghan in her first video.
OK, and I'm sure there'll be more posts to come. Mahathir, thank you. Now, Rangers fans will be celebrating this evening after their side finished with a clean sheet after the Scottish derby against Celtic ended 3-0. But this did little to close the gap between the two teams as Celtic continue to storm ahead at the top of the Scottish Premiership with an 11-point lead. Finally, the teenage darts star Luke Littler may have just missed out on the top title at last year's World Championship, but he's now only a step away from getting another shot. The 17-year-old will go up against Stephen Bunting in tonight's semi-final. Luke the Nuke seems to be the fans' favourite, as Ellie Pitt reports.
As the crowds arrive for a night of darts, there's a name on their lips that this time last year was just starting to be shouted. 12 months ago, fans were waking up to the talent of Luke Littler. Now, he's a seasoned darts sensation, and tonight he's throwing for a place in the World Darts Championship final.
I watched him back in the Prem, and he was classed in. He's just too good. Yeah, definitely all the way, all the way. Littler, all the way.
Bit of Littler tonight, yeah, 100%.
Yeah.
Yeah, definitely.
I think Littler will win, but it depends how Littler plays, to be honest. I think I'm going to go maybe 5-2 to Littler.
This could be the second time Littler has played for the world title. A year ago, he came close to clutching the major trophy, but the then 16-year-old had to settle for second. Still, not bad on your debut. This time round, he's had a few closer than expected matches early on in the tournament. But last night, the teenager made beating Nathan Aspinall look easy.
Luke Littler
It could be a tough choice for British fans in the semi-final later, as Littler faces fellow Englishman Stephen Bunting.
Double 10. Stephen Bunting is a semi-final.
His lookalike son cheering him on in the crowd has made the 39-year-old Liverpudlian a bit of a cult fan favourite. But for the bookies, Bunting is no match for Luke the Nuke.
Bull finds it this time.
But for those fans willing him to finish last year's fight, there are only 2 matches between the teenager and trophy. Ellie Pitt, ITV News.
Gripping stuff. That is it for tonight. The weather is up next before Anne Emmerdale double bill. Romilly is back later at 10, but from me and all the evening news team, bye-bye. Enjoy your evening.
Visibility may be low this evening.